In this exercise, I'm going to show you all the details associated with saving a document from Adobe Illustrator. But first, I want to show you one more terrific thing about that rearrange artboards command. I've gone ahead and created a variation on the previous illustration called a brand new jumble.ai found inside the O1 Make Doc folder. And I'm going to switch over here to my artboard tool because notice here inside of the artboards panel, the pages seem to be arranged in order, even though the big numbers are all jumbled. But in fact, the artboards are jumbled too. So if I switch to the artboard tool, you can see that the artboard with the big 8 on it is indeed page 8, which is artboard 8. 2 is page 2, artboard 2. 5 is page 5, artboard 5, and so on, despite the order inside the artboards list. So the artboards list is always showing you the artboards in order, regardless of their physical location inside of your illustration. So let's say you want to order everybody up. You want to put them right where they belong. Why then? Make sure that the artboards are arranged the way you want them here inside the artboards panel, and then go to that rearrange command. And by the way, you don't even have to be inside of this view here. You don't have to be in the artboard edit mode. I could switch out and I could go up to the object menu, choose artboards, choose rearrange, or either way, it doesn't matter. You can go over to the artboards panel, click on the flyout menu icon, and choose rearrange artboards. Either way, you're going to get this dialog box right here. I need to change the number of columns to 5. And I'm going to increase my spacing value to 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4, and then a little quote mark right there. I want to move my artwork with the artboard. And then I'll click OK in order to apply that modification. And now all the artboards are in order. We can confirm that by going to the artboard tool. Sure enough, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, in exactly the order they're supposed to be. All right, let's switch back to the selection tool and save our changes. I'll go up to the File menu and choose not the Save command, because if I press Control-S or Command-S on the Mac, I'll update this document. And after all, I want you to have the jumble document to work from, so that would be no good. Instead, I want to save a different version of my illustration, so I'll choose the Save As command or press Control-Shift-S or Command-Shift-S on the Mac. Brings up the Save As dialog box. Now, I already have it trained on the contents of the O1 Make Doc folder inside of your exercise files folder. Let's go ahead and rename this guy something like Perfectly Arranged. And notice it ends in a .ai extension, which I did not replace. That tells me that I'm working with an Adobe Illustrator file. However, I do have different formats to work with. For example, I could save a native PDF document, meaning that it would open inside of the free Adobe Reader or inside Adobe Acrobat. It would be the kind of document that basically anybody could open because, as I say, Adobe Reader is free and PDF is supported by default on the Mac. You can open it up inside the preview utility and so on. So the person on the receiving end of this file would not require Adobe Illustrator. And yet you could still open up that PDF file inside of Illustrator and modify it because Illustrator does treat PDF as native, and we'll go ahead and put PDF descriptions of your files inside of a .ai file as well. We'll see how that works in just a moment. Or you could drop down here to Illustrator EPS. If you're working with a very old school workflow that involves something like an older version of Quark Express or something along those lines, then encapsulated PostScript may be the way to go. When I choose it, though, notice Illustrator is going to ask me, do you want to use the artboards? And if I turn that option off, then I'm just going to save one big, huge EPS file that contains all of my numbers. If I turn it on, then I'm going to save different files for each one of my artboards. Or I could say, I just want a range of artboards such as 2, 5, through 7, that kind of thing, which would get me artboards 2, 5, 6, and 7 there. And then I'd click on a Save button. That's not what I want, however, because EPS, even though it had its heyday about 15 years ago now, Illustrator is the best way to work, the .ai file. And here are the reasons. First of all, if you're working with Adobe InDesign, then .ai is a much better way to work because you can place native Illustrator files into InDesign with no problem. I've been using that workflow for years now on my own books. And even if you want somebody to be able to open this file inside of, say, the free Adobe Reader, why then they can, because you can build a PDF description of that file inside of the .ai document. So I'm going to go ahead and choose .ai, You can save all of your artboards as you're seeing right there, perfectly arranged as my name. I'll click the Save button. That brings up the Illustrator Options dialog box. Now you can change the version. Notice you have all kinds of versions to work from. And if you count up this list, you'll see that Illustrator 10 came right before CS. So CS is 11, CS2 is 12, CS3 is 13, CS4 is 14, CS5 is 15. Now, if you go back in time, the good news is that other people can open your illustrations. For example, if you save an Illustrator CS document, then somebody who has Illustrator CS and doesn't have a more recent version of the software can open the file, but you're going to lose a lot in the translation. Notice I'll choose CS, and it's going to tell me saving to a legacy format may cause some changes, but it doesn't tell you what those changes are. And in fact, the changes are considerable. I was telling you, for example, that Illustrator CS4 was the first one to support artboards. So if you went all the way back to CS, then you'd have to save each artboard to a separate file, or you're going to end up getting a big document with all the numbers inside of it, which might not be what you want. Anyway, I'll go ahead and turn that checkbox off. Again, you have the option of saying all or specifying a range. I'll go ahead and turn it off. If you want to save your artboards, at the very least, you need to choose CS4. But if you do that, then you're going to lose some of the new CS5 stuff, such as variable width strokes, for example, or illustrations created on the perspective grid, that kind of thing. So your best bet, when in doubt, just leave it set to Illustrator CS5. Just know that it's not necessarily going to be backward compatible. Some stuff could be lost if somebody tries to open it in an older version of the software. You want to leave the fonts option alone here. Drop down to these checkboxes. Create PDF compatible file. What that's going to do is include a PDF description of your document inside the larger .ai file, which means that somebody can open it inside Adobe Reader. The only reason to turn this checkbox off is if you want a smaller file and you know absolutely for certain you do not need a PDF version of the file in there. But if you're going to place an AI file into InDesign, that's got to be turned on. Very important. Embed ICC profiles. There's no reason on earth to turn that option off. Leave it turned on. That's your color profile right there. Very important. Use compression. Absolutely. This is lossless compression, so don't be worried about it. It just makes the file smaller on disk. And given that we're working with Illustrator CS5 as our format, we can go ahead and save all of our artboards inside of a single document. And that is it, my friends. Go ahead and click OK, and you will save all of your changes inside of a .ai file. In the next and last exercise of this chapter, I'm going to show you how to close multiple documents at once.